Daniel and Dan Rossi from NWEN. So
howdy.
Dan's helping to put this one on for us, which is awesome, and NWEN's just been a great partner and organization for us for Founders Institute. So I'm going to do a little about NWEN for people who don't know.
Early stage startups. We will teach you everything you need to know and introduce you to everyone you need to know to make your first startup feel like your second. Which is why we work with groups like Founders Institute. I've put my very own wife who's working on a startup through the program. It's excellent. So we are here for you to help you with issues that you have as you're getting started. Ideation, obviously, is one of those things as we go through picking business models, validating them, working on executive summaries, all the way to finding and pitching investors. Just know that we're here with those sorts of connections. And so by all means, if you need us, snag us. You can reach us, obviously, on our site. Our cards are here. Reach out to Dave or me, and we'll help you out. Of course, we're here all night, so
Daniel, is there any difference between what you guys do?
So the thing about so very similar in terms of content over time. What I like about Founders is that entrepreneurs need deadlines. And Founders is a 15-week program, and it's an accelerator that and all that goes along with that. But it's a 15-week program that will go from after a period of ideation, like we're doing here. You find out this idea is worth really pursuing, even possibly quitting your day job for down the way. It's a start and a finish section. We've got a class that you go through it with, and mentors that you go through it with. And then when we do supplementals and one-offs, so all throughout the year we'll be dealing with the subjects, and we deal with them in a recurring way. The reason that we partner like we do is we're similar but different and helpful, I guess, in both of those senses.
You're kind of different phases of your company life. So NWEN's kind of an open event. You can come to any event. You can still be kicking around your day job at Microsoft or Amazon or wherever you happen to be. And people can be just hanging out looking at startups. When you decide to make the leap into Founder Institute, it's a 15-week accelerator program. We have a couple grads here that will be happy to tell you about it, I'm sure. And you have a deadline every week. You have working groups every week. And in order to graduate, you have to launch with a company. So it's not like a class where you're like, hey, I passed. Actually, to graduate, you have to actually launch with a product. And the point is to help you launch your company, not just to help you run through a program. So very different in what we do as far as end results. The target market we serve is very similar. So
yeah, it's a nice preparation, and then I'd say it's a great supplement with NWEN as they're going through. And again, ask the grads who go through it with office hours, with something we call the First Look Forum, and then with speaker events to add to it. And we can talk more about that offline as much as you'd like. You should know something we're doing together, by the way, something called Mentor Monday. You'll see it on the back of the one-sheeter that you have. It's next Monday. It's a great opportunity for you to come and listen to a subject next week talking all about financial pro formas and projections. Some of that scares the hell out of people sometimes. We're ready to help take that fear away. Dave's actually an expert at this, and so is Chris Dishkin, who's coming. And the beautiful thing about Mentor Monday is this. You come, it's a lunchtime, grab a sandwich, come and listen to the speakers talk, do the Q&A. 3 folks who have been tweeting, you need to have pound Mentor Mondays and at NWEN.org, so you get about 120 characters to tweet us your startup idea. The 3 winners get one-on-one time with the mentors. So I just wanted to tell you that's coming up. It's a nice thing to supplement what you're working on and what you'll be doing in the next week. We do that once a month, and as you'll see throughout the year, some big speakers are coming by to talk about big subjects. With that,
awesome, thanks.
Okay.
So I'll introduce Joel when he gets here as well. Joel's one of our mentors. So the Founder Institute program here in Seattle has about 75 active mentors, about 40 mentors per semester. There are no service provider mentors other than lawyers. We figured that legal people should give you advice on legal things. But other than that, the mentors are all CEO, founders, and all have gone kind of before you and done the stuff that you were talking about you want to do. So that group's about 75 folks, about 45 any given semester. So a little quick note on my background. So a serial entrepreneur for me. I had a chance to start my first company in 97, sold it in 2002. If you remember 2002, it wasn't a great time to sell a company, but I had a chance to get it sold in any case. Went to work for a venture fund for 3 years. Was on the board of directors at Classmates.com when we sold that one. Kind of a fun one, $127 million in cash. Cash is always a good option. and have been fortunate to be on the sell side of 6 deals. Since then, either as founder and CEO or as a board member. So most of my work today is kind of vocational board member. This is my hobby. I spend it 1 day a week doing stuff on one very long half day a week because we start office hours at 1 o'clock. And we run 2 semesters a year. We run a spring semester and a fall semester at Founder Institute. 15-week program, about 100 companies will apply. We'll take about 35, and about half of those will graduate. And some of you are going, why is it only half of them will graduate? And the answer is, we do 2 cuts. We do 1 hard cut at week 4, which you get to come in and take your idea from something like this and pitch a mentor on why you should stay in the program. So, and they get to score you. Hi, Joel. And they get to score you on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 is, I hate it. Don't waste any more time of your life pursuing it. 2 is, I really don't like it. We don't let them use 3, because 3 is like, ha! And it doesn't help you at all. 4 is, I like it. 5 is, I love it. And if you score 3 and above, you get to stay. And if you score below 2.5, you get invited back next semester for free. Come up, grab some drinks or food. So the way the program works is, one of our community services to you as entrepreneurs or hopeful entrepreneurs is we don't want you to spend the next 5 years of your life working on a dumbass idea. And you know people like that, right? They've been kicking around the ecosystem in Seattle for a while, and you're like, how long have you been working on that idea? And they're like, 7 years. And I met one of those people at a startup weekend, and 7 years on this idea? I'm like, dude, please don't go 8, because that would be bad, right? And as you learn from this part of this program is, it takes as much time to work on a bad idea as it does to work on a good idea. So I would encourage you to use these 4 weeks to think about, I have this idea, I'm really committed to this idea. Don't be committed to the idea too much yet, right? We're going to give you a framework to think about it over the next 4 weeks and help you do that. So my background is mostly as an entrepreneur and an operator, but also on the venture side. This is Joel.
Hi, guys.
So Joel's one of our top-rated mentors in Seattle. Joel also has got to mentor in Spanish, in Colombia, actually.
Really?
So, so Joel, there's Founder Institute now worldwide is about 30-some cities worldwide. We've got about 1,500 mentors. We've now crested 1,000 companies that we've graduated. And only about 6 of those cities are in the U.S. So as an example, I'm headed to Istanbul, Turkey a week from Saturday with my 18-year-old to go mentor over there. So, which has been totally a fun opportunity to go. So Joel's background is as an attorney. He worked for a company called Packet Video in San Diego until it was sold to NTT Docomo. And was Chief Strategy Officer for Packet Video. If you remember back to the days of flip phone and putting video on a flip phone, that's what his company did back in the early days. Our parallel conversation is kind of near field communication right now. It's one of those areas that somebody's going to spend a lot of money, and it's kind of a question of who's going to be able to endure it long enough. So as a mentor, I'll tell you Joel's well ranked because when he sits down with raw ideas with people, and he'll go, that's probably not the idea you want to go with. So one of the things we'll do with you tonight is go through some Q&A with you guys. What are you thinking about the ideas? So what else did I miss there? Adam to Mary, moved from San Diego up to
the only thing, yeah, I spent some time in the Valley and in Southern California. So I kind of seen different entrepreneurial scenes as well. You're going to my 3rd year in Seattle, so I have also a good sense of kind of what's the scene here and the differences and sort of the myths about entrepreneurship here versus elsewhere. Finally, I would say, as we also was saying, is I'm not just looking at the menu; I'm eating the meal. And so, for all you guys know, is I'm actually doing a new startup of my own. Hopefully, it's an idea that doesn't suck, but I'm actually doing one. So I'm where you guys are.
We sat and had coffee last week and doing a one-on-one on. Joel got me and sent me a note. Hey, I have this new idea I want to pitch you on, and I'm like, for you, anything, right? So, and I try not to do a lot of one-on-one meetings at this point because I can spend a lot of time doing one-on-one meetings with people with really interesting ideas. Where I'm like, don't do that. That would be bad, right? So, so he's in the midst of it as well. So that's us. You can ask questions about us as we go. But what I wanted to walk you through was the agenda. It's a little small, so for those of you in the back, let me give you a couple of bullet points. So we're going to talk tonight about the market. What's a big market? What are big problems? What are big ideas? We're going to give you some Q&A time just to go over that. And then we're going to actually break you into some working groups and give you some homework to get you on the path of having I need to go answer some of these questions by next week. If you look down at what we're going to do from the next 3 weeks, and we'll run through the same kind of structure every week. With Joel tonight, we're going to talk about big markets, big problems, and big ideas. And how do you know when you have one? And how do you know when you don't have one? And how do you know when you've been hanging out with this idea way too long and you need to let it go? Right? Or how do you know, how do you make it bigger? Right? Next week, we'll be talking about venture-ready research, doing target markets, and we're talking about business models. So there's one of the sessions that we do talks about the 13 B2C internet business models and what are the benchmark data and comp data that gets you to $10 million in revenue. So, which is super useful if you're like, I think my conversions ought to be 3.5%, and it's like the industry average for your particular one of your 13 markets is 0.6%. There's a little difference there, right? So we'll actually give you the benchmark data. We'll talk with you about what those models are. So Dave Bloom will be here next week to do that. Dave is the CEO, or chairman now, but was the CEO and founder of Z2 Live, which is a gaming company. The following week with Justin Wilcox and Daniel will be doing a very tactical how to validate your idea.
Can
How
I
to
just
get,
comment
yeah.
about David? Because I think you guys will enjoy it. I mean, the one thing about people who come from the game space, and why that's a perfect one for him is, games these days, for those of you guys who are following that, right, it has nothing to do with games, and it's all about metrics, right? I mean, Zynga, until it cratered, was actually an awful game company, but was pretty good at metrics, right? And so, if you want to talk to somebody about metrics, particularly if you're going to do anything online, game people are really fascinating to talk to because that's all they obsess about. So David's good at it.
And the big data component, one of the other things that's interesting about David is, for those of you who know Madrona Capital, Madrona actually seeded Z2. And David and his co-founder were basically, Madrona wrote a check and said, here's a check, go figure out what you want to go do. So David's going to bring you from that perspective of having been has done 3 startups before that, and then having one that was seeded by a venture capital fund. So when you think about, is your research really venture ready? David's living in the space of, we went and did that for a venture fund to go start a company. And so you'll like that if you like the gaming space. Justin Wilcox and Daniel will be talking about sales and marketing, customer acquisition, how to acquire customers, how to figure out what people are searching for, how are you going to go acquire your customers. And I would tell you the 2 sides of the same coin in this 4 weeks we're going to talk about is there's a product and idea and there's customer acquisition. And I've done some startups where I'm like, we invented this really cool thing that no one knows they're looking for. Damn it. Right? Because it's this cool thing, but it's not like anybody's searching for it on AdWords, and you can't buy traffic for it because no one knows they're looking for this innovative thing that you did. And I love innovation, and I hate innovation for that reason. So we have to get creative around how do you go acquire customers? What traffic? Who has the list that you want to have? How do I go get it? And what Justin and Daniel are going to bring you is a real tactical how to go deliver those things. Right? So homework this week is light. Homework that week is actually roll up your sleeves, go do your keyword account, figure out what people are people actually looking for what I'm trying to find? And you'll end up with very step-by-step instructions on how to do that.
Yeah, I have some scars from that one, guys. I did an angel investment in a company in the Valley. It was so cool on the first 2 things, and huge market and great, product solution fit, but acquiring the customers was just a nightmare. You can tell you about it later, but it was just a segment that you just could not turn these people into customers. And even though you should have been able to, and it's really, the thing is still clinging to life, partly through the will of CEO. But the reason it hasn't gone anywhere is just you couldn't convert those people they wanted into customers. Like.
And then the last week, Joanna Lord will be here. Joanna's the Vice President of Customer Acquisition with SEO Moz. It's interesting. I went to Joanna and said, which session? Assuming she wanted to do with the week 3 session, and she's like, I want to do the week 4 session. So you guys will still get a subscription to SEO Moz and a bunch of other stuff that undoubtedly come with some of these things. You'll get a bunch of references to some free tools, but in customer acquisition and communicating your idea with some clarity, I will tell you this, that section is one of, between tonight and your idea, communicating your idea with people around you and with us, and week 4 you'll walk out of here going, hey, somebody can actually repeat my message. That is so damn cool. Because tonight somebody's like, I think what you said was this. Oh no, that wasn't it. So by the time we get to week 4, that's what we'll be covering. So on that note, let's get into your startup idea. So there's Joel's Twitter ID and my Twitter ID as well. Some general ground rules. Sorry. And it's pretty far away. So, did I get it right?
It's just my last name with J and a B.
All right, so some ground rules. When I talk with somebody up front about this, there are always risks that somebody's going to impact your idea. I will tell you though, on the contrary to the exception, the rule is most ideas die from lack of exposure, not overexposure. So you've been sitting on your idea, it's difficult to communicate, there's risk associated with sharing it. We don't have you sign non-disclosures in this because most of you are going to pivot from the idea you're working on anyway. But there's always a risk of that. I would tell you that if you have a trade secret, that you shouldn't talk about it. After doing a number of M&A transactions, it astounds me as I go into a deal when we're doing due diligence to buy a company, what things people are willing to tell me that are really trade secret things. So if you have a trade secret here tonight, just say, I have a trade secret, I'm working on this. That doesn't excuse you from talking about what type of market are you going to serve? Why are you serving that market? What do you think is cool about it? Why is it a great market? So if you have an idea, it's like we have a patent, then don't go into the details of the patent. Actually, the patent's easy because you've already published it. But if you have a trade secret, keep it a secret. But ideas die from lack of exposure, not from overexposure. So the ground rules are, most of you are going to pivot from the idea you're starting with. That's good news. The faster you do that, probably the better. But that's always a challenge. So yeah, the last bullet point there is just don't ever, when you get to a point where you're like, I'm going to go meet with investors, don't send them a non-disclosure and ask them to sign it. Because investors don't sign non-disclosure. So you're asking them for money. Their reputation is based on the fact that if they steal your idea, which happens on occasion, but very rarely, that you're not going to get that done. So anything you'd add to this one?
I would just say there's a funny way. Have you guys seen the guy who just asks people random nonsense stuff that people will say no to and does it like every day for 100 days? He kind of started out because he suffered some rejection, but he turned this now into his thing. He's like the guy who asks people for crazy stuff and they tell him no constantly, but once in a while they say yes. And the interesting thing at the end is you know, the guy feel like that his life's been transformed because he no longer worries about people saying no to him, and he's just totally, he went from this kind of shy, painfully shy guy with no social skills to now he's just bold beyond belief, right? So this has kind of transformed his life. So what I would say for you guys is, you have to get used to talking about your idea, right? Including in front of strangers. You have to, you know, always be pitching long before you ever pitch it to any serious person, much as an investor or semi-pro, whatever. You better have pitched everyone you bloody know, right? Your neighbor better be sick of it. Your hairstylist better be sick of it. So if you're not even comfortable talking about it in this kind of forums, you have serious issues, right? About your confidence in your idea, and just go check out this guy's plan if you want to gain confidence in life about having people, you know, laugh at your dumb idea.
All right, so a couple survey questions for you guys. How many of you are already working on an existing business or existing idea? Okay. So you're working on an existing business or an existing idea. It's not a new idea. Okay. So the rest of you are working on brand new ideas. You haven't launched a product yet? Some people are? Okay. How many in the business-to-business space? Interesting. Okay. And business to consumer? Okay. The rest of you don't know? Okay, we'll talk about that. That's okay. I do both. No, you don't. How many of you are thinking at some point that you'd like to seek investment? Okay, good. All right, so that helps us gauge the audience a little bit as far as what you guys want to do. Mostly tech businesses. So others are kind of tech-enabled businesses. We're going to use the internet to help you find customers, sort of stuff. Okay. All right, good, super helpful. All right, so we're going to start off with the investor perspective, right? Because one thing that you need to understand in advance is if you start with the idea that we're going to go raise money at some point, or we want somebody to buy us at some point, right? Part of the reason to build a company is just to build what is called enterprise value. Now, you don't have to sell your company. This isn't about flipping your company, but it is about building the enterprise value of your company that someday you have the choice, if you want to sell your company, right? Otherwise, you built yourself a job, right? And when you die or leave, it stops, right? This is my conversation with my accountant, right? He's like, I have a great practice. I'm like, that's true until you stop. It's done. And then you have a client list you can sell. That's a service. And there's nothing wrong with services businesses. They just don't scale. So services businesses don't get investors, right? Other than like your uncle. But other than that, services businesses don't get it. So what I want to tell you about is that from an investor perspective, what investors look for are what people will call the four legs of an investment, the four legs of the stool of an investment, right? So number one is it a big idea or a big market? And if it's not a big idea, if it's not a big market, you just won't find investors for it. And it doesn't make it a bad business, but it makes it a business that you're not going to fund with outside investment. And the reason is because it's just because you have a need for investment doesn't mean that we're willing to write a check for investment, because we want to see how we get our money out of a deal, not just how we get our money into a deal. That make sense? So big ideas, big markets, and we're going to spend all the rest of the time tonight around those topics. The other three legs of this tool that you need to understand that investors look for are team. I'm pretty convinced, and most investors that you will read blogs about, or the folks who write great VC blogs, is that you three have an idea. I'm pretty sure at the start that it's not going to be the idea you end up with. Anybody know what Twitter's original name was?
Odeo?
Odeo. Anybody know, other than you, what Odeo did? Podcasts. What? Podcasts? Odeo? Twitter? So what's great about the story of Twitter is the founder of Twitter went back to Mike Maples and a bunch of other folks who were investors, and he's like, we started in this path to do podcasts, but Apple decided that they were going to do this, and it basically took out the whole market we were going after. Dave Bloom will tell you that what they originally started with and what they finished with was the same reason. Game Center came out 6 months before they were ready to release their version of Game Center. Right? So they totally pivoted their idea. So the guys from Twitter went back to Mike Maples and their investors and said, we're going to go into this thing called, we think microblogging is really going to be kind of cool. And of course, nobody knew what microblogging was. And ironically, they went to the investors and said, hey, Joel, if you want, we'll give you your money back.
I wish that old Lord given to me.
So, and some people took it. And Maples and some others didn't, and it turned out okay for them. Right? So what investors are investing in is the team. Investors don't invest in single founders. Just so you know. By the way, there's always exceptions to every rule, and you're like, what about this one? You get the point. The point is if you're a technical, you need a business person. If you're a business, you probably need a technical co-founder. Not probably, you do. The last two things are a scalable product. Scalable product is, by definition, it makes money when I sleep. Not every time I get a new customer, I have to hire 3 new people. Right? That's not a scalable business. So Classmates was great because Classmates made money when we slept. People would go online, swipe a credit card virtually, and subscribe. Right? So scalable product. And the last one is traction. And traction is this funny thing. In fact, I'll let you define traction as an investor. When somebody says, hey, you need some more traction. I'm like, what?
Well, the first thing I would just say at that point, guys, is when you kind of come full circle. So I've been an angel investor in deal. I've sold companies, and I've started companies. And you see, it's all kind of the same side of the same coin. I mean, it's not like you and the investor are somehow at war and you have different views of the world, right? It's all just reality that you have a good company or you don't. So the investors are really there to sort of enforce discipline, because they won't invest in dumb stuff. But you investing your own time, you should be thinking like an investor as well, right? If you're investing your sweat for the next X years, you're an investor in your idea. So what I would say about traction is, from the lean startup thing. It's you need experimental validation that what you think is true, right? You don't need huge numbers, but you need true validation from real people. So my example that was kicking around my head was, Dave was just talking with like the zip car, or Uber, right, kind of thing. That's what I was thinking, right? Like starting a taxi cab, right? It's got to be about the most uninteresting entrepreneurial thing you could do, right? Like if you told me, hey Joe, here's my business idea. Yeah, I'm gonna get a car, and then I'm gonna drive around. I'm gonna pick up people, take them where they want to go, right? I'd be like, great. So it's like the definition of a non-scalable service business, right? And you say, but I'm in the transportation market. It's a huge market. It's like, yeah, but your slice driving around trying to pick up people is not that big. So don't kid yourself. You know, lots of businesses, right? The corner bakery is you know, it's a bread industry, right? It's a big market. So you have to be able to take a meaningfully big slice over a relatively short period of time of a big market in order to have a big market. So, but where Uber or Zipcar is, they said, well, you know, let's just do something completely different around picking people up. And Uber, even though at the end of the day they have black cars driving around, they have a scalable business, right? And they also had traction because when they launched that thing in San Francisco, it went crazy for Uber, right? I mean, there's, I think in New York too. I'm trying to think if it was New York and San Francisco first or at the same time, but you know, among kind of the late night crowd, or especially in New York, kind of the investment banker, right after work kind of crowd, who, you know, you got to realize, actually, I have a brother-in-law who's in investment banking, and those guys, if they worked late enough, they actually did get a ride home in a town car, because the town cars weren't doing anything right at night, and so the junior guys, if you worked till like 10 o'clock at night, the perk was you would get a ride back to your apartment in a town car. People don't really know that, but if you worked at Goldman Sachs, that's why you worked till like 10 o'clock at night. So when they brought out Uber, all these, you know, 20-something hotshots were like, wow, right? Now I don't have to, you know, it's like, you know, it's like 10 o'clock every day, all day. You know, I just have to pay something. So the traction on Uber was instant, right? They didn't have to sit there and theorize about whether people wanted that. You know, the website was ringing off the hook that people wanted to reserve rides, and so then, you know, it was incredibly obvious for them to say, we have a great idea here, let's go to other cities, let's, right? That's traction, right? That is traction, just staring you in the bloody face, right?
Anybody not seen Uber? So Uber is a town car service that you basically have on your mobile phone that you can place a request for a town car, and it shows you on the map where they are as they're getting to you. So I asked that question wrong. You were very brave for answering it though. So everybody's like, yes, I don't know what it is. But there were some things that were unique about it. It was a mobile app. I could see where the car was, how close it was to me, right? So there's some things that are there that are really cool about design. So traction is one of those things that you're going to hear from investors over and over again. Hey, come back and see me when you have more traction. And you're like, what the hell is traction? How come nobody will say, right? And the answer is it means different things to different people. And in some cases, it'll always feel like it's the 2 steps further than whatever you are. And one of the things that's weird about investors, just as a preview for kind of investors, is investors don't always want to tell you no, because if you really do find something that's like totally off the hook, they don't want to be the ones that said no to you. So they'll give you kind of a, hey, get back to me on that. And you're like, it was a great meeting. And they have no intentions of investing, right? But you're like, but I felt good about it, right? So you just need to know that if you have these things and you're getting customers on a scalable rate and you're seeding the plan that you put together, you'll get meetings with investors. That's not a question. But if you're like, our plan is predicated on raising $5 million from you before we start, then you will never raise money from investors. And they'll talk about you after you leave the room, right? Because they want to know that you're going to go do this with or without them, and it gives them confidence that they're actually willing to